All right, hello everyone. Welcome to WisconsinPrepZone.com. Rob Hernandez, Dennis Senrau, trying something new again this year. Going Ustream with as we wait with you for the WIAA football playoff pairings to be released. And Dennis, first of all, let's talk about some of the games around the area tonight. The one that Nick Sunderland Saeed was at for us, Madison West, huge second half rally, beats Verona. And now we're seeing projections. Our friends over at WisSports.net, Travis Wilson, who has really become a very bona fide expert at this playoff pairings and playoff projections, is showing that perhaps Verona may not have had their season end at all. And what do you make out of what we're seeing out of this, the early projections on how many teams and what kind of teams are making the 224-team field?
Well, 4-5 record, you'd say, well, do they deserve going to the playoffs? But the Big Eight this year, I thought, was just very competitive. The fact that 3 city schools are making it says something about the volume of football going up there. I think for Dave Richardson, it'd be great for the guys if they're not their season's not done. They were talking about playing a 10th game next week. Now it might be a real game, not with just their sophomores and juniors playing.
Well, and that's a huge game. As I was going through a lot of the results from around the state tonight, I think it spoke to the parity and the competitive level that we've seen out of high school football this season. A couple unbeaten teams fell tonight within conference play against teams that they were heavily favored to beat. A lot of teams getting into that just above 500 bubble, some at 500. It's just been a very unpredictable year, and I think we've seen that right down to the wire.
Yeah, if you take a look at Division 2 and 3, a number of unbeaten teams going into tonight that were going to be available there, and how that field compares with Division 1. I mean, just the power teams. And then in Division 3, probably the deepest that field is going to be in a long time. And again, we've got a lot of local teams, Reedsburg, Mount Horr, Barneveld, Monona Grove slipping down, it looks like, to Division 3. Possibility DeForest was on the bubble there, that they could go down to Division 3. That would be a stunner for the local teams because DeForest defense, I believe, is among the best in the state.
Well, Dennis, let's go over with people what we're waiting for here. The WIAA is currently trying to identify the 224 teams that are in the postseason field. At that point, they'll release that in theory to the media, post it on their website. They've already braced their website for the annual crash, directing people to different parts of the site and maybe off-site to some host servers to try to balance the traffic. So we're hoping that this whole process doesn't get gummed up with technology, but
sorry, Todd Clark.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's always the challenge for our friend Todd up at Stevens Point to try to make sure that the website stays up and that we can all see what's going on up there. Now they'll identify the 224 teams. They'll break them into their various regional groupings. 8-team groupings, I believe. Is that right? 8-team
groupings, and then at 1:30 Saturday morning, Mike Minnick, the DeForest coach, said that's when he's supposed to get a phone call telling them where they would go to meet. When those 8-team groupings are set, they'll try to find a meeting place that's beneficial for all of them as best they can. Then they meet tomorrow on Saturday morning, but at 1:30, so they're staying up. So it's going to be a short night for them, just like the rest of us.
Yeah, no question about it. And at 11 a.m. They will seed and, as you said, and then group the games, and we'll find out where everybody's playing on Friday night or Saturday afternoon, as the case may be, depending on how those schools where they want to play. The new wrinkle this year, of course, Dennis, is that Friday is the preferred night, and a lot of us are big fans of that. And both teams have to agree to meet on Saturday versus agree to meet on Friday this year, going through the playoff system.
Right, that was long overdue. I thought they should have done that from day one, because Friday night is high school night. Saturdays you're running into, as you get later in the season, more conflicts with big college games. You also run the risk of not having your best officiating crews because they're tied up with the WIAA, with the state conference and the Big Ten and other conferences. So I think that was a plus. Keep them on Friday night and then have that option to go Saturday.
Let's look again at some of the scores from around the conferences tonight. As we sift through our piles here, you're probably wondering, we're in our brand new studio that our friends over at Channel 27 have constructed here at the State Journal building. But a couple scores I wanted to ask you about, Dennis, because it would look as though, and we'll check Travis's projections on WisSports.net and make sure that this is the case. Now, we saw Stoughton on one of the early projections, so even though they lost tonight to Milton, they would appear to be in. Milton, under first-year coach Bill O'Leary, has to be somewhere in this mix, you would think, having won the game tonight 6-3 over Stoughton. Now, I'm not seeing Milton on these projections here. Am I missing something? Are you seeing anything here? I'm not seeing
I don't see
the
Milton
Red
listed at
Hawks,
all.
so that may be another error that needs to be worked out. Again, WizSports.net trying to get a jump on the brackets and give us an idea as to where everyone ranks and how the field will be projected. And let's go back to their homepage here and actually. We maybe have spoken in haste with regards to Verona. Let's make sure we have the most current thing that Travis is looking at. Again, we're waiting right along with you as we try to find out the 2013 football playoff qualifying procedures there. And again, so now it's looking like Verona out of the playoffs, Madison West in. So let's clarify that right away. We don't want anybody to jump to any conclusions here. The projections we were looking at were ones that Travis did earlier in the week, and obviously Madison West pulls the big win tonight. We thought going in on our prep rally video that would be a very even-Steven ball game, and it was. Now in Stoughton losing to Milton, and yep, there's Milton at 9:30. So so let's clarify that. What we were looking at earlier were projections. So there will not be multiple teams beyond the teams with winning records, at least based on Wiz Sports projections going into the postseason. So let's clarify that right away. It would appear that in the Big Eight, for example, Sun Prairie, Madison La Follette, Middleton, Madison Memorial, Madison West would be the 5 teams in the postseason, and that again based on outcomes tonight.
3 from the city, 5 from the Madison area. No Janesville, no Beloit. It's been a while since I think that's happened.
And as we, again, looking at waiting for the WIAA to update their grid so it becomes official. And again, they were saying try back after 11:30 p.m. We're currently at 12:17 a.m. here in Madison, Wisconsin, and still nothing yet. And I don't know, does that signify anything to you, Dennis, that they're taking this long? I think, the last few years, and again, last year, a different dynamic, 8-game schedule, and it seemed as though we had it pretty close to midnight.
Yeah, I think the problem again is they want to make sure they have the right scores reported and they dot the I's, cross the T's, kind of a thing. That especially that'll be true with the pairings once they get released on Saturday. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer for the procedure to work. If everybody reported a score, you get a coach or somebody that's upset they lost. Maybe they're tracking down a few scores like we have to do every Friday night for the State Journal.
Again, according to Wiz Sports projections here, there will be some teams with sub-500 conference records getting in, but it'll be teams from the Scenic Bluffs Conference, the Central Wisconsin Conference, Wauwatosa West projected to be in the postseason based on the tiebreaker, again, or at least those are the teams under 6 teams to fill 6 spots, and that Spash, Stevens Point, and Greendale Martin Luther would be 2 of the teams that are out. Dennis, as we look again at the Badger Conference, that play-in game tonight there, Milton beating Stoughton to get to 500 in conference play. Now the Milton Redhawks are 3-6 overall, but they're in. Again, situation where it helps to have a conference with an odd number of teams so you can have an even number of conference games.
Yeah, exactly. Unlike the Capital, which only has 5 games, so 3-2 gets you in, 2-3 you're out. Big 8, 5-4. You can go 4-4 if that was, that then Verona and Madison West probably both would have made it. Last year at this time they would have.
That's for sure. And again, it is the way the system works. And would you, again, this happens across sports. Would you rather see a larger school in a smaller school? Obviously, there's a ton of excitement for these smaller schools when they can get into the postseason. Dennis, your game tonight, you saw Waunakee and DeForest. DeForest knocks off Waunakee. Waunakee would appear to be safe at 5-4 overall, 3-3 in the conference. And as good as that Badger North was, I tell you, I wouldn't want to face a Badger North team in the postseason if I'm a conference champion.
No, I wouldn't. First of all, Reedsburg is definitely the class of the conference right now. They finished 8-1 overall with their only loss during the season in overtime to Fort Atkinson week 1. They beat DeForest, they beat Waunakee, they beat Mount Horeb Barneveld, and then had a good game tonight against Portage to clinch their first title since 1995 overall, when they were in the South Central. They shared the title 4 years ago when they won state in Division III, along with Wanakee and DeForest. Wanakee is another team that I think they can use the extra practice time. A very young team, starting 3 sophomores, had 13 up on the sidelines tonight. We'll have 26 up for the playoffs. When was the last time a Pat Royce team had that many sophomores? That tells you where the strength of this program is right now. They were in that game until 1:57 left. They're only down by a touchdown, a couple of bad snaps over the quarterback and shotgun, and Jared Motif will be remembered forever in DeForest lore. Recovered a fumble in the end zone, clinched that win, and DeForest snapped a couple of big streaks against Wanakee. 15 games in conference play back to 1996, and a 10-game streak overall back to the playoffs in 2007. So, and on senior night for DeForest, it couldn't happen when your seniors make big plays.
Well, that's for sure, and we've been impressed with DeForest all year long, and so the only thing that impressed us more than DeForest was the fact that Reedsburg came out of nowhere to win that division of the Badger. And again, we're trying to wait and see where these teams will go for the postseason. Unofficially projections looking at the Badger North, you've got DeForest, a Division II team, but right at the bottom of that Division II breakoff. Reedsburg, a Division III team. Mount Horeb-Barneveld, a Division III team. 2 teams that are very good, could go a long way in Division III. The Wanakee Warriors, solidly entrenched as a Division II club, it would appear. And then you look at DeForest, and so DeForest, Reedsburg, and Mount Horeb-Barneveld.
And Fort Atkinson, that's another team that played very well. I didn't see the score with Edgewood tonight, but they've had a great season.
Yeah, they won it. I believe it was 38-28 late, and see what we have here on our 32-27. So it was 32-27. It was 32-21 late, and then Edgewood scores to try to cut into it. But Fort Atkinson wins that one, and establishes himself as the second best team in the Badger South?
In the Badger South. Last year, though, they have a little bitter taste from the playoffs last year. DeForest smoked them in the first round, and they thought that was one of the better teams they've had in a while. I think they learned a few things from that. That tough loss the opening game, they had that tough win opening game over Reedsburg, and then I thought they played Monona Grove well for a little bit, and then Monona Grove showed its true strength. The Silver Eagles, 9-0 in the regular season, but they've had a couple close ones down the stretch.
Well, we'll see exactly where these teams are headed for the postseason. Again, we are waiting right along with you as the WIAA tries to get us the 224-team postseason field. And as we approach the 12:30 hour, we would expect that to be any time. But right now, it does not appear as if the WIAA is ready to announce how the playoff tiebreakers and the like went on. Now,
how about the Capital Conference tonight? The Capital South tonight. Belleville knocking off Marshall, and New Glarus Monticello. Impressive win over Cambridge.
Yeah, big win, and with that Belleville spoiler role tonight, that really sent shockwaves. It's kind of neat, both those teams within a few miles of themselves, Belleville and New Glarus Monticello. Belleville, obviously their postseason fate was determined. They were not going to go to the playoffs, but they could certainly, ruin Week 9 for the Marshall Cardinals, and they did, winning that game at home tonight and rallying for the big win. Final score there was Belleville 23, Marshall 20 after trailing by, I believe it was 4 points at the half. But Highway 69 had to be a buzz tonight with all the stuff going on. That was a big win for New Glarus Monticello over Cambridge after the loss last week at Waterloo. Of course, the good news for the Cap South is that loss to Waterloo last week basically got Waterloo into the playoffs, because then they win tonight against Wisconsin Heights. A year ago, I believe the Capital South only had 2 playoff teams. This year they have 4.
Yeah, that's outstanding for them. And yeah, it was a big bounce back win for New Glarus Monticello. They had to win over Marshall. Marshall had 4 fumbles in the second half, and that's kind of the key here. If you look at who's taking care of the football this time of year, DeForest, as good as they are, they had 5 turnovers in their loss to Reedsburg. Tonight they had 3, and for a while it looked like that's what was keeping Wanakee in the game. But yeah, it's great when teams haven't been in the playoffs for a while, and hats off to the Milton coach, our friend Bill O'Leary, who
Yeah.
is coaching his first year at his alma mater. His son is in the program as a
Yep.
sophomore. He's back, and he gets him, looks like, in the playoffs in his first year with him.
Let's take a look here. Projected enrollment ranges, the low points for each division this year. Looks like Division One will be a slightly bigger field enrollment-wise. And again, when you have a Madison West qualifying and a Madison Memorial and a Madison La Follette, some of the bigger schools in the Big 8 Conference, that's going to help keep Division One a little bit larger than normal. 1421 according to Wiz Sports would be the low point of the Division One enrollment range. 936 for Division Two, 531 for Division Three, 358 for Division Four, 266 for Division Five, and 197 for Division Six. Would be the enrollment ranges there. So, and then of course the remaining teams in Division 7. So we're seeing a slightly bigger crop of schools in those top two divisions, Dennis.
Who's going to be the smallest school in the playoffs this year? What do you think? Biggest looks like Milwaukee-Pulaski, the Co-op, 3797. But the smallest, we always got to like those Division 7s, don't we, Rob?
Yep. Let's have you check your phone there, Dennis. Maybe someone's trying to
Looks like Belmont.
Belmont, which would be, and again, the way Belmont has played here the last few weeks of the regular season, the Braves almost upsetting Blackhawk last week, and then this week giving Potosi all they could handle. And we got any late word?
Just some Facebook.
Okay.
People just wondering what's going on.
Yeah, aren't we all?
The fans. I'll tell you, the technology sure has changed things a little bit with the instant access to everything. And like you said, with the website for the WIAA, hopefully they're able to deal with that annual crash, which has frustrated us in the past. But that was when we used to try to remember everything on Friday night before the coaches started seating. And I think I like this process better, and then they have a week of practice. And we're not turning around coming back first game on Tuesday.
No, that's I think for the kids, the fans, the media, especially, trying to preview those games, in that quick 4-day turnaround was a pretty daunting task when you have that large a playoff field, that many teams in. These are always the biggest games for everybody. It sure is nice to be able to have a full week to prepare.
And I think also with the emphasis now on awareness for concussions, head injuries, 3 games in 10 days, 11 days was just too much to ask for. And now you want kids to be able to go out and play. Tonight, Lucas Miller, 44 carries for DeForest.
Wow.
He said he's going to be in an ice bath tomorrow. I said, I bet
no
you
doubt.
will.
No doubt. As we look at some of the other conferences around our area, a big game tonight down in Walworth where Bigfoot knocked off Broadhead Judas 16-3. Dennis, we've seen both those programs make long journeys in the postseason in the last decade. The story behind that game, Walworth Bigfoot jumps out 16-0 early. Broadhead Judah gets a field goal in the second quarter. That's the halftime score, and then it's a defensive slugfest the second half. Those are, again, two teams I wouldn't want to get in the way of here in the second season.
I tell you, all the points have been scored this year when it comes down to games in late October, November, defense and running games and low-scoring games. And if you have a couple of those during the season, tight ones, it's going to help you playoff time. And that game, like I meant when I talked to both Pat Rice and Mike Minnick tonight, that was a playoff game for Wanakee and DeForest. Verona and West, that was a playoff game going in. And getting that little edge a little early doesn't hurt, because now that first playoff game, hey guys, we've been through this. It takes a little of the nerves off, I think.
I want to go back to the Big 8 Conference for a little bit, Dennis, if we could. I had a chance to listen to our WTSO colleagues, Ben Larson and Nabi Kelleher, on the call of the game of Verona-Madison West, and the presence that Aubrey Johnson of Madison West was on both sides of the ball, but especially on the defensive side, and seeing some of the great athletes emerge this year. And we've seen a faster brand of football perhaps in the Big Ten. There's been a lot of talk about how the Big Ten needs to increase its speed, overall team speed, to try to compete in the postseason, especially against teams from the SEC, especially when it comes to BCS National Championship time. And I think we're seeing it in the high school ranks. And I was having a little discussion with our colleague Art Kabalowski, who saw a lot of the Milwaukee City Conference during his days at the Journal-Sentinel, and saw a lot of teams that had some of those athletes but just lacked the depth and maybe the consistency. But boy, La Follette, Memorial, Madison West, Middleton this year, Sun Prairie we knew about with their athletes and their speed. I'm looking forward to seeing how much that translates over to the postseason. When I hear what a Madison West does to a Verona in Week 9, and I'm thinking, okay, West is going to go in as a 5-4 fifth place team in the Big 8 conference, and as we look at the projections on Wiz Sports again about some of those other Division I teams, you might see a Racine Horlick or a Heartland Arrowhead. Kenosha Indian Trail has been a surprise team. Milwaukee Marquette is sitting out there for perhaps a Big 8 team. Traveling that way, and then of course, depending on how the WIAA groups these teams in their different brackets, could it be a Fond du Lac? Could it be a team from the Fox Valley?
Most of the teams you just mentioned have track teams that are outstanding.
Yeah.
La Follette's had a solid program locally. Memorial last year with Jester WIAA and with Doris Fountain. You look at an Arrowhead when they're Racine Horlick, and I think that getting the track athletes out for football and getting the football athletes involved in track are big.
All right, and Dennis, here we go. We have it from the WIAA. If you're watching along with us here on WisconsinPrepZone.com, the WIAA has just moments ago made official the preliminary, and we should emphasize this is the preliminary football playoff qualifiers list, and we'll go through it and highlight some of the area teams in these divisions. Again, this is preliminary. What they like to do, Dennis, is they like to put the initial list out, have the people who really are into the deep qualifying criteria give it a look, raise any red flags that might need to be raised before they group these teams. But let's start first with Division I. As expected, the Big 8 conference with 5 teams. I'm seeing Madison West at 2071, Middleton at 2067, and Sun Prairie at 2030, along with Madison Memorial at 1843 and Madison La Follette at 1485. Those are the 5 representatives from the Big 8 Conference in the postseason from our area, all in Division I. The smallest school in Division I, Lake Geneva Badger at 1421. The break comes between Badger and Superior. Superior, the largest team in Division II, at 1418. And of course, as Dennis alluded to earlier, Milwaukee Pulaski. What do we got there?
We take a look at the big. First of all, how many teams we have that finish unbeaten that are in Division I, of which Sun Prairie's one, and looks like 2.
It looks like
Milwaukee. No, where's Mo?
It looks. You're right. It's 2. It's
2, and then conference champs. So you split up the 2 unbeatens, and you split up the conference champs. And we have 4. Looks like 7.
7 conference. 3, 6, 7 conference champs in Division I. So.
So yeah. So then we're trying to figure out where the 5, with all 5 being the same pot of 8 from the Big 8. I got a feeling somebody's going to get moved. Somebody probably to the southwest of the Milwaukee area. And who might be the lucky team that has to deal with Heartland Arrowhead in that bracket.
Yeah, Heartland Arrowhead. She also mentioned Mequon Homestead did drop to Division II again, so the defending state champs in Division II will stay there. And Homestead, the 5th largest team in Division II. Dennis, before we leave Division I, again, some teams that you might see Madison schools matched up against. If they aren't in their own quad or own pod, Racine Horlick, Heartland Arrowhead, Milwaukee Marquette, Oak Creek, always a power, not with a great record this year, Milwaukee Hamilton, Milwaukee Riverside and McWanago. We've seen McWanago games, especially when the Janesville schools have been in the postseason. That's been a pretty popular matchup, but no Janesvilles, no Beloits this year. It's all Madison, Middleton, and Sun Prairie. And Menominee Falls, potentially a team. Oconomowoc,
now,
team.
As a 9-0 team,
Yeah.
they better not be in the same bracket as Sun Prairie. You have 2 unbeaten teams. So Oconomowoc's got to go east to the southeast part of the state.
That's true. So it would appear as though maybe Sun Prairie will anchor an area around here, and perhaps again, you've got to get to 8 teams. So how you get there, that remains the great mystery, and we'll see how the WIAA chooses to group these schools. And again, as Dennis said, coaches have been told that by 1:30 they'll know where the groupings are and will they be going tomorrow at 11 a.m. to seed their postseason. Dennis, as we move to Division II, I mentioned Superior, the largest team at 14-18, the smallest team Slinger at 9:36, and look at this, Bill O'Leary's Milton Redhawks, 9:30, the largest team in Division III. Not sure whether that's good or bad for Bill, but the 9:30 and 9:36 is where the divide falls.
DeForest missed it by 45. DeForest is the second smallest school in Division II, just ahead of Slinger.
So it leaves open the chance for another DeForest-Waunakee matchup in the postseason. As we mentioned earlier, Waunakee firmly entrenched right smack dab in the middle of Division II. Not a whole lot of local teams, as I'm looking here, Dennis, in Division II. You've got Waunakee, you've got Fort Atkinson, and you've got DeForest. 3 bona fide local teams. You throw in Watertown, which got in at 7-2, 5-2, and wow, that's there's going to be some travel involved there too.
But now let's take a look at the unbeaten teams. Kimberly at 9-0, Oshkosh North at 9-0, Holman, Hortonville, Menominee. Menominee's got one.
Yep, Ashwaubenon.
Ashwaubenon, there you go.
And let's count the conference champs: 3, 6, 7, 8. So you're looking at probably each quad having 2 conference champs in it, and meeting potentially in the state semifinals or the state quarterfinals as they along the tournament trail there. So, wow, that's very interesting in that the Monona Grove falls to Division III. They're the 3rd largest in Division III. And let's go right there, Dennis. Again, we mentioned Milton, the largest team in Division III. Monona Grove not far behind, with Greendale in between those two. And then other teams, Reedsburg, Mount Horeb, Barneveld in Division III. Let's see, Madison Edgewood. Jefferson makes the Division III cut. Edgerton and Lodi. Lodi at 538.
And Evansville, Albany.
Yep, Ron Grovestein's club making the postseason and going to Division III. How close did Bigfoot come to Division III, Dennis? 4 away. They, the Bigfoot Chiefs, the 4th largest team in Division IV. And
Dave Balls and Lodi, sorry guys, no Division IV this time, up to Division III, the 3rd smallest school. And that was just by 13 students. A few transfers here or there, right?
That's right, yeah. As we look at the unbeatens in Division III, Greendale, Monona Grove, Wapaka, and the aforementioned Lodi Blue Devils are the 4 unbeatens in that division. As we look at the conference champs, 3, 6, 8 conference champs also in Division III.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with Lodi and Monona Grove both being unbeaten and both being conference champs and both being put in the same pod. Better not. Like Lodi, I'm sure would like to move out of that one, or Monona Grove.
Well, and another unbeaten conference champ, Edgerton. I mean, they're unbeaten in their conference, and with a 1 loss overall. But I'm not sure, the exact number on the playoff criteria for regional groupings, but that's got to come into play.
Yeah, definitely. You look at
Reedsburg too.
Yeah, you look at Reedsburg at 8-1. We can back it up one division. When you look at DeForest, their 1 loss was in overtime to Reedsburg.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've got to kind of figure out they were 2nd place team, but when they try to match up based on seeding, when the coaches talk about that, I'm sure that's going to come into play.
All right, so that's the Division III story. Is a lot of local teams with a lot of great resumes there, and the balance of power, at least the last few years, has been in the southern part of the state with that, and not a whole lot of teams from northern Wisconsin. You look at like a Medford and a Mosinee, but for the most part, you're looking at south of a line, if you were to draw a line across the state just south of Stevens Point, I would say most of the schools in Division III come from that part of the state. A few creep up there, Green Bay, Notre Dame for one. Wapaka might be north of that line. Mosinee, as I mentioned, but Medford, but otherwise a It is a heavy Southern Wisconsin flavor, so a lot of options there for the WIAA to break these teams up into their regional groupings in Division 3. Dennis moving to Division 4. Freedom, the largest team at 525. They skate in. They drop down ahead of Two Rivers, which is the smallest team in Division 3 at 531. So 6 students separate Divisions 3 and 4 at the enrollment range there. The smallest school, Manitowoc Roncalli, coming in at 358. Again, not much, there's a little bit of a buffer there between the largest school in Division 5, St. Croix Falls, at 349. But let's look at the local teams, Dennis. And again, not a ton. Montello, Princeton, Green Lake, the co-op there from the Trailways Large. With those combined enrollments, they get put into Division 4. 2 teams from the South Central Conference, Nakusa and Watoma. 3 teams out of the Southwest Wisconsin Conference, River Valley, Platteville, and Dodgeville. And of course, Platteville and Dodgeville both had to win tonight. Platteville beating River Valley to get in. They make it in Division 4. Broadhead Judah, Division 4 school. Marshall and Columbus and New Glarus Monticello also in Division 4 from the area. As I was talking with my friend down at WEKZ, Mike Zwiefel, New Glarus Monticello is a school that could go any direction. I mean, they could possibly face a Broadhead Judah, depending on how the coaches see the grouping. If it's heavy in terms of Southern Wisconsin schools. And they've played before, but New Glarus Monticello's played teams like River Valley before too. So a lot of options for a swing school like New Glarus Monticello.
All right, and then there's one school in there that we remember, Rob, from our time here in the 90s that was dominant, Columbus. A few years ago, they were 0-9.
Yeah.
So new coach, programs definitely on the rise.
And as we look at overall unbeatens, Bigfoot at 9-0, Ellsworth at 9-0, and the smallest school, Manitowoc Roncalli, also at 9-0. Few unbeaten conference champs in there. Nakusa went through the South Central unbeaten at 5-0. Peshtigo went 7-0 in the Marinette and O'Connell Conference. Roncalli, of course, unbeaten in the Packerland Large. And Ellsworth and Bigfoot also unbeaten. Not a ton of unbeaten conference champs. Only 2, 4, 6 conference champs in Division 4.
Yeah, that one's that'll be interesting how, like you said, which direction some of those teams go.
All right, as we move on now to Division 5, again, the WIAA just announcing tonight the the divisional breakdowns for the 224 teams in the postseason. Westfield out of the South Central Conference, the largest school from our area at 344, as I mentioned earlier. St. Croix Falls at 349, the largest school overall in Division 5. Other local teams in Division 5, Poinette out of the Capital North, and scrolling down, Dennis, where are our local teams? Where are our local Cambridge, Cambridge and Waterloo, but a dearth of local teams. They've gone up to 4 and they've gone down to 6 apparently.
And Lancaster. Sorry, we're in Division 5.
No, that is right. Lancaster is in Division 5. Can't forget John Hoke's Flying Arrows. They'll be on the list of favorites for many people here entering the postseason. The Arrows at 9-0 overall, 8-0 in the SWC, and Dennis, again, not many, but the quality with Lancaster in that group, it may be a moot point when it's all said and done. There just haven't been very many schools that have stayed close to the Flying Arrows.
Yeah, Rob, we were talking Lancaster from week 1 in our prep rally videos, so it's good to see John and the boys right back there again.
All right, so as we look at the number of conference champs, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. That's always a good number for the WIAA. And unbeaten teams overall, we've got Arcadia at 9-0. We have Mondovi out of the Dunn St. Croix Conference at 9-0. Lancaster, as we mentioned, 9-0. And Stanley Boyd out of the Clover Belt Conference at 9-0. Stanley Boyd, an unbeaten conference champion. Racine St. Catharines out of the Metro Classic, an unbeaten conference champion, 7-0 in their conference. Lancaster, Mondovi, also unbeaten. Cedar Grove, Belgium, a team that's made many deep postseason runs in the last decade. They won their conference at 5-0. That would be the Central Lakeshore Conference. And Arcadia and Bloomer also getting in its unbeaten conference.
And the fourth small school, Waterloo, getting in, as we talked earlier, that win over New Glarus Monticello, put them in the playoffs.
All right, and we'll see how the Pirates fare as one of the smaller schools in Division 5. Moving to Division 6, largest school, 255. That's Colfax out of the Dunn St. Croix Conference, getting in with a 5-3 record overall, 3-3 in league play. Partyville from our area, Cuba City, Necedah, Iowa Grant, Deerfield, Darlington, Riverdale, Pecatonica, Argyle, and Brookwood. Brookwood, the smallest school in Division 6 at 196 students. The enrollment breakdown between 6 and 7, just 3 students. Lake Country Lutheran out of the Midwest Classic, they get in with an enrollment of 193 along with Blair Taylor in Division 7. So 196 the cutoff there. Dennis?
Partyville, 3-3, 4-5 overall. There's one of the ones who wondered about at 500 in the conference.
And Deerfield, which has run into the likes of Darlington in recent years. That could be another matchup too, as Deerfield finishing Trailways Large conference play at 5-1 overall, or in conference 6-2 overall. Again, several teams out of the SWAL in there. Cuba City 5-2 in conference play, 6-3 overall. Iowa Grant 5-2, 7-2. A lot of options there. I tell you, if they can't, and then Peck Argyle, a team that finished, let me see, it'd be third, tied for second in the, actually third in the Six Rivers behind Potosi and Blackhawk. They could be a team that winds up facing one of those heavyweights.
Yeah, that's a team that's been in the playoffs in the past. It was a perennial playoff team and one of the small schools in Division 6.
All right, and finally Division 7. 193 all the way down, as we mentioned earlier, Belmont with 71 students, but playing really well right now, Dennis. And Cassville, a team that also very small in numbers, but having a great season. The Comets are just with 85 students. So let's run that down here too.
Basically start from the bottom up. The enrollment, the smallest schools are our area, all the guys from our area.
Let's see here. DeSoto out of the Ridge and Valley. New Lisbon out of the Scenic Bluffs making the playoff field. Fall River, an unbeaten conference champion. They celebrate tonight with a win over Eustisford. Bangor out of the Scenic Bluffs Conference. Randolph out of the Trailways Small. Hillsboro out of the Scenic Bluffs. Rio out of the Trailways Small. North Crawford, let's see here. North Crawford, which shared the conference title in the Ridge and Valley with DeSoto. And Potosi, Cambria, Friesland, Blackhawk, Ithaca, Weston, Cassville, and Belmont. I'm smelling a couple brackets with local teams.
Oh, definitely. Nice to see those smaller schools, ones that get to play first. One thing I want to ask you earlier is, with the smaller schools, how many more years are we going to see a Division 7? And when will we see where that Division 7 might be replaced by 8-man football? Understand in the southwest part of the state, they do not want to play that. They want the full thing. Well,
we shall see on that. Again, a lot of these schools, we're seeing a lot of them, going down below 100 in enrollment, which, if you divide that student body in half, with wishful thinking, you're looking at like a Cassville with 40 plus kids in, boys in the school and 40 girls, and maybe even fewer at a school like Belmont. And you got programs that, Mount Horeb, Barneville with 80 kids in the roster. It seems like, full complement of jerseys. You do wonder, don't you?
Yeah, especially when you have cross country and soccer in the fall for the guys.
Yeah, I tell you, Dennis, only 4 conference champions though in Division 7, which kind of makes it a crapshoot. WIAA has a lot of options with only 4 conference champions as to where to group these schools.
Yeah, and unbeaten's looks like just a couple there. Was Fall River at 8-0 and Blackhawk at 9-0.
Yeah, so again, many of these schools, especially the ones that you see here, we're seeing conferences like the Dairyland, the Merrillwood, the Cloverwood. Oftentimes playing schools that are a little bit bigger. Catholic Central back in the postseason with a 5-2 conference record, 5-4 overall. We've seen them wreak havoc with teams that sometimes as good as Blackhawk, at 9-0, just because of the conference and that Metro Classic that Catholic Central plays in now. Of course, it used to be the Midwest Classic. You just can't count out a team like that. Lake Country Lutherans had a good run the last few years.
Yeah, definitely. You have to look at the size of the conference, and this is where playing up, where it might penalize you trying to get into the playoffs. Once you get in the playoffs, it's definitely a help.
So as we said, the WIAA with their postseason field, and if you just joined us, 5 teams out of the Big 8 make it. Another 4 out of the Badger North and 4 out of the Badger South. Am I correct on the Badger South? I think that's correct.
Milton, Edgewood, Fort Atkinson, and Monona Grove.
and 4 out of the Capital South and 3 out of the Capital North. So we go back to what I said at the outset of the show. As competitive as high school football has been during the regular season, if it's anything like that during the postseason, fasten your seatbelts.
Bring it on.
Bring it on. Well, Dennis, let's before we sign off here, let's just make sure that they haven't done anything with the groupings. Right now, they're saying the 18 groupings by division with seating meeting host indicated will be released in about 45 minutes at 1:30 a.m. And of course, all seating meetings tomorrow at 11 a.m. and the brackets will be released shortly thereafter. It is like Christmas Eve here for high school football fans, but right now that's what we're seeing. Any final thoughts on the playoffs?
Yeah, what better way to prepare for the Badger game at 7 o'clock tomorrow night than find out where your teams are and to plan your next couple of weeks for the playoffs?
Yeah, definitely. Well, we can't wait to see where these teams are headed and how they're going to be grouped. And we appreciate you guys all staying up with us, watching and going over the broadcast of the high school football playoff field being released here by the WIAA. Again, just over a half hour ago, a little less than a half hour ago, the WIAA announcing the 7 divisions, 224 teams, their preliminary playoff qualifiers. And so far, Dennis, I haven't seen any changes to that. So right now, it looks like the teams that we described, again, going back, Madison West with that big play-in win tonight over Verona. They're in. Wanakee loses to DeForest tonight, but they're still in. Milton beats Stoughton to get to 500 in conference play. They're in. So a bunch of schools took care of business tonight, and they're, I'm sure, excited to see their name pop up on the list.
Yes, and now the next thing is find out who you play.
Who you play. All right, for Dennis Summerall, Rob Hernandez here from the Wisconsin State Journal studios. Have a great evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us here as we break down the release of the 224-team WIAA playoff field. For Dennis Summerall, Rob Hernandez, we'll see you on Prep Rally, and of course, you'll see us somewhere next week at the stadium. Thanks for joining us. Good night, everybody.